in person for showing up, and we are really excited about getting this project back out on the street and get it under construction. So yeah, Tim, take it away.
Thank you, Austin. So a couple things to note. So with the virtual, so the people online are able to ask questions through the chat. So anybody who's on the virtual meeting, if you have any questions, just go ahead and enter them in the chat. We'll get to them after we're done. And then after that, then we'll open up the questions to folks here in the room. I do want to introduce the project team that are here today. So besides Austin, of course, who just spoke, we have the design team. We have Matt Kirshner with AECom. We have Claudia Percinelli with Consor. They're the bridge designers. We also have Mike Keller with Consor. He's on the virtual meeting. And then Jacob Martin with RSNH. We have Rick Early with RSNH. And myself, I'm Tim Berry with RSNH. And as Austin mentioned, we're the construction administration team for the project. So want to note one more thing. Everything we talk about today, everything in the presentation is for information only. This is really just an informational meeting. It is not a, this is not a pre-bid meeting. This is really just an open house, just to share some information about the project, just to get it all out there for everybody. This project will be going out advertising for bid. We're hoping for December, might be January, but definitely stay tuned for when that officially comes. It will be definitely coming in the next couple of months. We just haven't quite nailed down the date yet. So gonna go ahead and get started with the presentation. Just to make sure everybody's in the right spot, it is for the 22nd Street project, Keno Parkway to Tucson Boulevard. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to go over the scope. A couple of reasons for this meeting. Number one, this project was advertised as a CMAR project back in, I think, 2021. A lot has changed since then. Among the there's obviously no longer a CMAR project. So we want to talk about this project scope, because there might be some people who don't know anything about the project, some people who maybe looked at it when it was on the street before, but we want to go over the project details, talk about the current status, talk about what has changed. That's going to be a big thing. What has changed in the scope from 2021 until now, and then some further information for potential bidders. And then we're going to also do a 3D tour of the project, where Consor's prepared some pretty cool renderings and a 3D tour of the project itself, and then talk about what we're going to be doing next. So this is the scope. Actually, sorry, let me jump back again. I mentioned before, this is the project team. Obviously, besides City of Tucson, we have AECom as a lead designer, and their subs, Consor, SCE, our foundations, and then SOMAS, and then also the RSNH as the construction administrators, and our sub-consultant CEI. So that's the project team that we're going to be working on this until the end. So this is the overall scope of the project. As many are aware, obviously the main spans, the twin three-span cast-in-place segmental bridges. Besides that, though, there are also AASHTO Type 6 modified girder approach spans. There are 4 spans each for each bridge of the AASHTO girder spans. We have drill shaft foundations. We also have spread footing foundations. There will be bridge coating. And then the existing bridge demolition, obviously the major part of the project, and then roadway widening. There's cast in place retaining walls, asphalt paving, concrete paving, drainage. There's a jack and board, water service improvements, and then obviously the pedestrian and bicycle path improvements, lighting, landscaping, barrier wall, etc. So that's probably not all inclusive, but the majority of the overall scope of the entire project. So we want to talk about the current status of the project. I mentioned also that most of you notice this rendering is also sitting over there. Get a chance to look at that. That's the overall project with the updated design. That is the most current up-to-date design of the project as it stands right now. So the biggest change, and where we're at now, project delivery, as I mentioned, this is now going to be a pure design bid build project. The CMAR is no longer going to be this project delivery. We are at 100% plans right now. They are not the final signed and sealed version, so we cannot share with you the plans as of yet right now. So we're not going to have the final plans available for the group today. Once they are the final PS&E package, obviously they'll be available, but right now we're just not there yet. The project funding is finalized. That was a big hurdle, obviously, with this project. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in depth later on. We've also very recently received the categorical exclusion for the project, also another big hurdle that we've recently obtained. We are currently preparing the bid documents, as I gave over the schedule a little bit earlier, And then we have an anticipated construction duration of between 30 and 36 months. So we're also gonna get a little bit more detail on that, but that's right now the current anticipated project schedule. So again, I talked about it. What has changed? Quite a bit has changed with the scope with this project since 2021 when it was advertised as a CMAR project. Number one, we have obtained federal funding. There's no federal funding early on. There is now. The project has received a RAISE grant. There's also some STBG funds that have been obtained. So that means obviously there will be FHWA federal highway oversight, basic wage rates, Build America, Buy America requirements, EEO, DBE requirements. So that is a pretty significant change from the scope originally. Another significant change, the city of Tucson has decided that they were going to allow a full closure of the 22nd Street corridor during the entire duration of construction. So that will be one of the first activities right off the bat, will be the closure of 22nd Street and allow basically unfettered construction access to the corridor. What you see on this, and actually in the handouts that we had there, is the detours that the city of Tucson has already decided will be the detours for the project. This is also shown on the website, the city's project website. And we had some more handouts in case you didn't see them, but these will be the detours that will be, they've already actually been presented to the public. The public already knows about this. They know that these detours, so this will be what we will be using for the project. Another significant change from 2021 is the superstructure design layout. Originally, it was, I believe, a 5-span cast-in-place segmental. So we now have 3 spans of cast-in-place segmental. Again, that's per bridge. They're twin bridges. So we have the span layouts, which I'll walk through briefly. So this is one of the bridges. Just walk through the span layouts and can't read that.
Five.
Go ahead, read that.
So this project has the 2 approach spans for asphalt on either side of the structure. On the eastbound, you're going to have the 147-foot 9 and then it's going to be to line up the abutments. It'll be a shorter one on the westbound, so 105 foot. Then the second span is going to be 151 on the eastbound, 151.3 inches on the eastbound, and 108 on the westbound. Moving on, you'll have the first span, or span 3 of the segmental, being 272 feet and 6 inches. The primary and main span over the railroad tracks, the majority of them is actually 376 feet, span 4. Moving on to span 5, which would then go over Braza Aviation, SR 210, is going to be 266 feet and 6 inches. Then we get to the final 2 spans of the eastbound and westbound, spans 6 and 7. So if you notice, you kind of flip-flop your span lengths for the east and westbound bridges to align at the abutments. So here we have the eastbound span 6 is 208 6. Then the eastbound span 7 is 108 and 6 inches. Then 105 feet for the span 7. Then it also for the westbound bridge span 6 will be 151 3 inches, and the westbound span 7 will be 147 and 9 inches.
Thank you, Jacob. Another pretty significant change from 2021 is the drill shaft design. I will again reiterate what's shown in this is not the final design. These are just approximate anticipated lengths, but these are not the final lengths for the project. But so the drill shafts there'll be 8 of them total on the project. You can see the approximate, but we significantly reduced the number of shafts, the overall shafts for the project, and also reduced the lengths of the shafts. But the final details, of course, will be in the final plans. And we also want to know there was a test shaft that was performed in December of 2022. That's helped dial in these shaft lengths and the drill shaft design as well. Very significant change. If anybody looked at the plans from the original design back in 2021, the pedestrian facility has changed pretty dramatically. There was in the first go around, the first design, there was a separate pedestrian bridge that hung in between the twin segmentals, or the twin structures. That has been gotten rid of, and now the pedestrian facilities will be on the outsides of the bridges. There'll be 8-foot pedestrian, bicycle pedestrian pathways on each of the structures. So that center pedestrian bridge is now gone. Now you can see a cross section from the plans where the new pedestrian facilities are now located for the project. And finally, some minor change with the ramp access between Barraza Aviation and 22nd Street. The most significant change is the ramp B. The current configuration out there right now, you had 2 separate access. You had a dedicated free flowing right to get on that ramp, and the current left turn ramp off of Barraza Aviation. Those will both be eliminated. It'll be combined into one single ramp. So from Barraza on to eastbound 22nd, there'll be one single ramp that we're calling ramp B, and ramp A essentially remains the same. And then with this addition of ramp B, another change is Wilson Ave will be there'll be a cul-de-sac, and so Wilson Ave will actually no longer access 22nd Street directly. So minor change there with ramp B as part of the new scope. Here's a rendering of that. We'll see. We're going to see more in-depth renderings here in a little bit. So some general information. Okay, some general information for the bidders. In the contract documents, there's going to be some requirements for the segmental construction. There's going to be requirements on personnel for the construction manager, the project manager, project superintendent, and the second superintendent to have some level of experience with segmental bridge construction. Again, I point out these are draft specifications. These are not the final project specs, but those will be in the contract documents. As far as the specifications for the project, for the post-tensioning and the grouting, we will be using the PTI specifications for our post-tensioning and grouting. So PTI M50 and PTI M55 will be the project specifications for post-tensioning and grouting. The standard specifications will be the Association of Governments, or the PAG specs from 2021. And we also will be utilizing AASHTO LRFD bridge construction specifications. And there is a portion of work that is on Barraza Aviation. So for any work related to Barraza Aviation, we will be using ADOT specifications. Another major aspect of this project is obviously we are going over top of the UPRR rail yard. So there's some besides the inherent obvious things that are associated with that, we wanted to point out a couple of things. One is through negotiations with UPRR over the last years. One thing that we are going to include as a requirement is a track protection system for work that is going to be occurring, obviously with the segmental construction over top of the existing rail lines. There are 7 different rail lines that will be running underneath this new structure. So at any time when we are running underneath or over top of, we will be utilizing this track protection containment system that essentially what we're anticipating, or what I think we're going to like to see, is something hanging from the bottom of the form traveler system. We have some renderings of some ideas. Again, these are just some sort of proposed renderings that might be utilized. Something like this, again, a system that hangs from the form traveler, and then is able to contain small tools, small bits of concrete. Obviously, nothing that could contain a segment or anything like that, but this basically anything for following the tracks as we progress along during the segmental casting operations. Here's again a simple rendering of something that it might look like. It'll be up to the contractor to develop this system, and it'll also be subject to approval by UPRR. Of course, anything that gets proposed out there, they're going to want to have approval of. So this will be something, it'll be in the project specifications. There will be a specification written for this. It'll also be notes in the plans referring to this. Also related to UP, there's obviously going to be a number of submittals, but 3 right off the bat that are going to be important to getting construction started. That'll also require UP approval. First and foremost, the bridge demolition plan. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of effect on them with that demo plan, so they will need to be an approval on that. Then there's gonna be a rail monitoring plan as well that they're gonna have to approve, and a shoring plan. So there are two piers that are in there right away, and there's some other work that needs to be done in the right of way. So any type of temporary shoring for the existing UP facilities, there will be a shoring plan that is required, and of course, subject to approval by UP. I'm sure most people understand this, but the contractor will have to obtain a right of entry agreement through UP as well. That will also be something that need to be done very, very quickly right off the bat. And anybody who's worked in the rail understands, you know, what this process entails. But we're going to highlight some of the things related to this as far as where the anticipated access to the rail yard are going to be. So Jacob's going to come up and talk a little bit more in depth about that, and also some of the property along the corridor for potential laydown and use by a contractor.
And one thing to add to the, not only is a lot of the plans subject to approval by UPRR, but any work in the Brazos Aviation Corridor SR 210 is also subject to review by ADOT. So just be aware of that as well. So I'm going to move on to a couple areas on the project that can maybe be utilized potentially by the contractor going into it. So kind of pulling up some different locations on the project. I'll kind of start with a couple of areas that they may be able to utilize as laydown yards or areas to kind of stage their work. So I'm going to start on the west side of the project, actually kind of the corner of Cherry Bell and 22nd. There's a small section of property right here that is privately owned. Again, this is potential areas. This is something that has to be worked out between that private landowner and the contractor, but there is a space there that is potentially be used by the contractor to be for construction. So there are also a couple other properties. There's a small section right here on the northwest portion. Not only is there a lot of work going on in this area along the corridor and the easement, but there's also a small section in this area that can be utilized along Campbell as potential laydown area as well for the contractor to be. Now this still, you know, working with the city to make sure what property and areas are available. Definitely want to make sure that you follow up on that. There is an area that's adjacent that's being developed as part of a separate development plan. So just making sure that you know what area is able to be utilized. We actually have a small section where the test shaft was actually done in this area right here. So there is a small section where we did do the test shaft for the project. Kind of moving over to the east side of the project, there's some property on the north east portion, and this is city-owned property. Again, you have to, there's discussions on what can be utilized. Those will have to be discussions that have to be had with the city of Tucson to ensure that this property is able to be utilized. But there is opportunity to utilize some of the property from the city of Tucson as staging areas. We're going to talk a little bit about access. Again, when the right of entry, it goes in, all the different areas that the work can be performed needs to be cleared with UPRR and even the access points. So I'm going to start a little bit outside of the view up here on the northwest side. There is a small access point off of Cherry Bell in this section that can be utilized, and actually UPR has gone in and reinforced this crossing area to be utilized in the future by the contractor. Again, this is all part of the right of entry that has to be completed, but there is a small portion up here on this section that can be utilized to access between the tracks for construction activities. And moving back down to the project, there is another small crossing right underneath the existing bridge. Just a couple of notes that there is quite a bit of traffic and right here on for the making up of the rail yard itself. So you have to be a little bit more traffic compared to the other side. But this is potentially an area that can be utilized as well. There is a box culvert along this section of the project as well that comes underneath that they utilize currently. So that would also, depending on your stage of construction or the contractors, it can be utilized as well. Also on this project, there is a pedestrian bridge. Now you kind of see the shadow in this overhead view. There's a pedestrian bridge that is potentially can be used as well from the contractor to access in between the tracks to perform the work that needs to be happening. Again, this is all potential areas. These are areas that we've identified with UPRR, but it would have to be worked out with the contractor and UPRR to make sure that they're available and that whatever agreement they have on the right of entry, it meets what their expectations are. So these are just a few areas to access their right of way in particular.
Okay, thank you. And we encourage everybody to go out there and take a look. Obviously, access to UP's right away is not going to be available, but from public right away and from the surface streets, you can get a good look at the project. You can get a look at the existing bridge and get a good look at all these different areas. So we encourage everybody to go out and take a look at the area. So now I think we're going to do our sort of virtual tour. So Paul, if you want to go ahead and take control, and we'll get that set up. And a lot of these, as that's happening, a lot of these things that we're talking about, the access points, these are stuff that we have talked with UP already in the past. But as Jacob mentioned, will they change their mind? Will there be different requirements? We don't know. But in the past, they've been receptive to a lot of these different areas. So that's what we encourage you to explore for whoever put the contractor on board. All right, now as we take a look at the 3D rendering here, we'll go ahead and start on the east side and fly over towards the west. Paul navigates.
And we're going to do a quick run through of a lot of this information, and then we can actually fly around, and if there's any questions, we can actually show those views a little bit. So just a heads up, we're going to do this kind of overarching view, then get a chance to see some still shots, and as well as if there's specific questions on areas, we can always travel to that during the question and answer period as well.
So as we are starting on the east side, heading westbound, what you see on the far left is ramp B coming at us. So that's ramp access from Barraza Aviation onto 22nd Street. On the far right, that is the access to ramp A. You can see off in the distance, that's accessing Barraza Aviation from westbound 22nd Street. Then we approach the bridge. As you can see, part of the scope of this project is the widening of 22nd Street. So you see 3 travel lanes in each direction. That's obviously part of the main scope of this project. You can see the pedestrian access. We'll get a better shot of that later on. We have some still photos as well from this 3D model that we're going to be able to show. But as you can see, also in the middle, that pedestrian bridge, the steel pedestrian bridge, is no longer there. The pedestrian access is on the outsides. New lighting, that's part of the scope of the project, of course. New lighting on the bridge structure itself, as we are now passing over Barraza Aviation, and we're approaching the rail yard. I want to point out the fencing. It's hard to see from here. We'll get a better look later on, but there is special fencing required as we are over top of the rail yard. It can't just be a vertical fence. It has to have an overhang as well. And then a standard barrier wall, traffic rail separating the vehicle traffic from the pedestrian traffic. And then fencing on the inside as well. That's also a rail requirement, just because there's potential for something to be to fall off the bridge onto the track down below. Now, as we're approaching the west side, as the bridge lands, we see access on the right to Wilson. Right. Sorry, Warren. Okay. Warren Avenue on the right. And also you see where the pedestrian bridge, or the pedestrian access on this right side, ties in to the existing pedestrian facilities there to the right. And then Paul's going to go ahead and swing it around and start heading the other direction. One thing I will point out, if we back up a little bit, off to the right, where the pedestrian comes off, pedestrian facilities come off the eastbound structure. There's a hawk crossing right there to get pedestrians from essentially the bridge, the 22nd Street corridor, over to access that is now heading underneath the bridge down to Campbell, etc. So now we're going to go ahead and fly off in the other direction. We'll stay down below grade here. All these roads obviously are included in the new scope. On the left, you can see that's the cast in place retaining walls. on the approach structures. And we're approaching now, you see the asphalt girder spans, span one for the bridges there, and the second span of the asphalt girder section. Also, I'll note new lighting down below as well as on the above on the structure. So now we're going to the segmental span, first segmental spans, and approaching the UP yard. Right now, as close as access as you're going to get to the UP yard. I'm going to point out also, if you pan a little bit to the left, Paul, you can see that the piers, the pier locations that are actually in UP right away. Right there, twin wall piers for the segmental portion. And obviously, so that pier location, those two pier locations are where the drill shaft foundations are. And then you'll see the second ones as we progress further towards the east. There is 7, I think I mentioned before, there are 7 different crossings where the bridge crosses over active rail line. So that is where there, the most influence from UP will be, is when we're actively working over top of the rail lines. There's the second set of piers, and then as we're approaching Barraza Aviation. Again, the twin wall piers.
And to note that these twin wall piers on the left, those are actually in ADOT right away. So it's actually, there is, so this section is not going to be in the railroad right away. So these were actually moved so that we were outside of the right of way of the rail yard
So
for these.
that's a good distinction. Thank you, Jacob. So yeah, they're not in the rail right away. Obviously, they're still being impacted by the rail as far as staging, crane setup, materials, etc. But yes, they are technically not in the rail right away. But they are in ADOT right away. As we continue towards the east, see the other side, the asphalt girder spans, also some more cast in place walls that are off in the distance. And then what we're going to fly over is the Barraza or the aviation pedestrian path running left to right there. That's an existing pathway that we're going to be tying into. So as we fly up, that connection that curves around that we're going to fly over, that's the connection that is going to go directly to the new bridge and the new pedestrian access on the corridor. So this is something that is additive to the project. So coming off the eastbound side, there'll be a direct connection that gets you all the way down to the aviation pathway. And then now we're also flying right on ramp B, and where ramp B ties into 22nd Street. You're going to see there's another hawk crossing. So for pedestrians that don't want to go down to the aviation pathway, that want to continue further east on 22nd, there's another hawk crossing to connect to further pedestrian facilities further down. So that's the fly through. And now we're going to just touch on a couple of stills. I'll go ahead and change this out. Okay, this first one is a cutaway cross section of the asphalt girder section. Good look at the number of girders that are required. And the bridges are not, they're twins, but they're not mirrored. So so basically the span lengths they're the same span lengths, but just not mirrored each other. They're what was the term you use? I'm sorry, Claudia.
They're on the opposite sides of the
Yes.
bridge.
And they are AASHTO Type 6 modified girders.
So for those shorter spans, you're going to have the 4 lines versus the 6 straight lines of the girder. So that's the distinction between those two.
Go ahead, Paul. Another look at the asphalt girder section. It's a good cutout section of the segmental section. Pretty typical segmental box girders. You can see this the lane layouts as well, and a decent look at the pedestrian facilities. Go ahead, Paul. Okay, another look. All right, here's another look. Good look at the UP yard and where some of the lines cross underneath the segmental, and obviously there is vertical clearance requirements. There's horizontal clearance requirements. all that is spelled out in the plans. And so all construction activity and of course permanent facilities need to adhere to those UP requirements.
One piece in this photo, right, right next to the segmental piers on the left, there is an oil water separator. I don't know if that was touched on earlier, is that oil water separator is not gonna be moved. So we were able to move some of the piers to not have to do that work. So you may have seen that back in 2021, was that was gonna be a facility that was moved. So those piers were adjusted replacements, so we can avoid having to move that oil water separator. So it's not shown on here, but that kind of empty space in the shadows there between that empty line and kind of the middle and those twin walls on the left, that section under there is oil water separators that does not have to be removed or relocated as part of the scope anymore.
Yeah, that was a pretty significant scope item in the earlier version that we got eliminated. So thank you for pointing that out, Jacob. Go ahead, Paul. Here's a good look at the pedestrian facility. That is an 8-foot pedestrian path for bicycles and for pedestrians. It'll look exactly the same on the other side. And you also see a good look at the specialty fencing that needs to be required for UP's requirements. Go ahead, Paul. Good look at one of the travel lanes. I believe this is the westbound direction. Go ahead. And now what we're looking at, we're looking back from this would be the northeast side of the bridge. So the ramp that we see cutting across left to right, that's ramp A, going from westbound 22nd to Brazza Aviation, and crossing underneath it is the existing aviation path. So it is going below ramp A. It also goes below ramp B on the other side. That's the way it's existing out there right now. It'll be maintained like that. Obviously, there'll be some improvements to it, but it will still need to go below the 2 ramps. Go ahead. And here we see again, we are on the east side of the project looking west. Far to the left again is ramp B coming at us from off of Brazza Aviation. And then in the far right, that's the access to ramp A to get back onto Brazza Aviation. And go ahead for the last one. And here's a good look at the intersection that's currently, the new intersection for Brazza Aviation and 22nd Street. The current configuration of this intersection does get redone a little bit. It gets moved a little bit, and as I mentioned, instead of the 2 separate ramps going from Brazza onto 22nd Street is now one single ramp, ramp B. And the left turn lane gets adjusted a little bit, and there's no longer the free flowing dedicated right to go from Aviation onto 22nd Street. This new signals at this intersection, obviously new striping. This is a decent chunk of the ADOT work that we referred to. And I think that's the last one, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
I'll appreciate you presenting. Stay on as when we get to questions. We can also pull up this the rendering and the live model. If people have questions, we can kind of show them maybe potential areas. So please hold on, and we'll get to those in a moment.
Sounds good.
Okay. So that's for the slide to pop in. That's our presentation. I will point out if anybody has any further questions after today, contact information for Austin, myself, and Jacob. And then that QR code takes you to the City of Tucson website for this project. There's some more information, the detour maps like I told you about. And there will be more information. That some of the stuff that we presented here today will be posted on there as well. And then as more information was available, we will continue to post. So with that, look and see if we had any virtual questions.
So the way we're gonna kind of operate with these virtual questions, we're gonna try and get a lot of the virtual ones first. And get those out of the way because people will be typing those in, and I'll call upon those people. Some people, I think there's been one question so far in the chat. So feel free to put it through the chat. If you don't feel like it's clear enough, just say you would like to ask a question and kind of raise your hand and I can unmute you. We can work to get those questions answered. Big thing with the questions right now, if we don't have an answer for you, it's a great opportunity for us to get those and either put it part of the bid documents. And just a heads up, there will be pre-bid meetings. So this This is all informational for everyone that's on the call and present here, but there will be pre-bid meetings, so more officially questions and answers will be answered through that. We're always open to get more information out to the contracting community. So we can definitely look into ways to get those answers back out to this group. But we hope to provide whatever information we can today. If we're not able to, we'll work on a way to get that at a later date as well, to make sure you get those answers, those questions are being answered. So with that, I'm going to start with the first question that I'm seeing as part of this.
Yeah, the question, can this PowerPoint be made available? Most of the information will be made available. It might not be this exact PowerPoint presentation, but the answer is yes, most of this will be made available to the public, because it's, like I said, it'll be posted on that website, the City of Tucson's website. Next question that just popped in: how much time will be given between advertisement date and bid due date? Austin, do we have a good answer for that now?
2 days.
2 days. Okay, you think that's? I think that's fair. Yeah.
A month.
1 month?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 month right now is again, subject to change, but right now we'll plan on 1 month of time. While we wait for maybe, I guess, anybody in the room have any questions they want to throw out there right now? Yeah, so
What's the anticipated duration?
for the whole entire project, we're anticipating between 30 and 36 months. So
From start of construction to end.
Will it be in work days or calendar days, your schedule?
calendar days. What is the projected advertisement date? That is a very good question. We don't have an exact date yet. We are shooting for sometime in December. I'm not sure if we're going to meet that deadline or not. It will be, I feel very comfortable in saying we're going to try very hard to make sure it's not beyond the end of January, but we're shooting for December, January timeframe. But unfortunately, I cannot give you an exact date right now. Next question: funding was mentioned earlier. Can you elaborate? Yes, so there's federal funding, like I mentioned, and the rest of the project is funded by RTA. Those of you who are local know what RTA. It's RTA PAG, FEMA Association of Government, and in conjunction with RTA, it's a local funding source that encompasses City of Tucson, surrounding communities, and Pima County. So those are the two main funding sources: FHWA and RTA PAG. What is your basis for award? Best value or low price? It will be low price, traditional design bid build. January would be a better advertisement time than December. We're thinking December 23rd. I don't know if that's.
Note taken.
I agree. January is much better than December. How do the quals for segmental experience figure in? They're going to be contract requirements. There will be no pre-qualification, but there will be contract requirements written into the specifications and into the contract documents that to perform the work, these requirements will be spelled out. Anybody else here locally or on the virtual? Yes.
Regarding the segmental requirements, is that going to be a requirement of the general contractor themselves, or if they partner on the job with the segmental contractor, will those qualifications be?
Partnering will certainly be, yes. It will not be necessarily a requirement of just the general contractor.
Okay.
We assume there will be partnerships, joint ventures, et cetera. So yes, a second firm or a subcontractor can provide that experience and that expertise. At least 6 weeks would be a good time between advertising and bid date. Thank you. We'll take that. We will take that under consideration. We appreciate that. If there's any other comments like that, we absolutely send them our way. We will take all this under consideration, and if we want to go that direction, we'll consider it. And so thank you very much for that comment. Walk through the multiple specs. We will be following along the alignment. So as far as the alignment, it's pretty simple, honestly. The only thing that's not governed by, so again, the standard specifications are the PAG specs. Those of you who are local know what those are. The PAG specs will also be, you can go on PAG's website and feel those, but we can also put a link on the website. And then, everything segmental bridge related, most specifically the post tensioning and the grouting will be covered by the PTI specs. Everything else bridge and roadway related will be PAG. Then of course there will be project specific, supplemental, specifications as well. The only thing that's really different along the corridor is anything involving Barraza Aviation. So any of the realignment of that intersection, anything on Barraza Aviation will be ADOT specs. But everything else on the project will be governed by PAG. And then, of course, there's the segmental specific, which are different. But the AASHTO girder bridges, the roadway work, all that will be mostly PAG with the exception.
AASHTO will also be governed.
Yes, there's an overall, we will be following,
The AASHTO.
most of the specific items will be PAG, special provisions, and the PTI specs. But there will be this more general, and if anybody's familiar with the AASHTO specs, they're more general. But the bulk of the bridge work will be either PAG or the special provisions and PTI. Yes, sir.
You mentioned federal funding involved. The general federal funding involvement requires us to get some sort of percentage of DBE, WBE, but
Yes.
you mentioned it's just low price only. So will it be qualified that DBE, even though he may not be low, will still get more preference?
It'll be a minimum requirement.
Yes, there will be no,
Yeah.
there will be no adjustment to bid prices based on DBE participation. There will be a requirement for the project. X% will have to go to DBE, but it will not factor in the selection.
But it's a requirement. It's just like, the
So they have
ability
to have it no matter
You're
what.
gonna have to have it no matter to be able to be bidding on the project. It's gonna be a requirement.
To avoid the follow-up question, we don't know yet what that requirement is going to be. City's working on it right now to determine what that requirements, and we're working with federal highway and establishments.
Austin, do you have anything further to add to that? Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Other than the submittals you mentioned there on the railroad,
Mhm.
you guys have all the right of way permits already? It's all been taken care of
As far as rail or for the whole project?
for the whole project?
We're finalizing the final, temporary construction easement agreements. Right away is all taken care of in general. There's no further, but the only thing that left is the final TCE requirements that we're finalizing right now. It should be done very quickly. But as far as overall right away, yes, we're all set.
So all ADOT right-of-way permits will be through the city of through the owner, correct?
Yeah, the only ADOT involvement is with Barraza Aviation. So they're not contributing any funding or anything like that. Are also agreements with UPR executed? So, the ones that we can, yes. So the CNM agreement is done and executed. The ACC agreement is also done and executed. So really the only one left would be the right of entry, which of course that would be done by the contractor. But the two that the city needed to take care of, CNM and ACC, yes, those are done.
And there are a couple other items, the box culvert, there's a box culvert work in there right away, as well as the jack and bore. Those were previously agreed on and we're currently awaiting the extension of those. Because the project has been out for so long, those were previously agreed upon, and we're just awaiting that the final executed extension of that. So when you ask us when it's gonna come out, we just want to make sure that we have to have all those in place as well. So those who are waiting back from PRR to extend those agreements that previously been put in place.
All right, I want to go back also. Someone asked a question about funding. There are actually technically two more funding sources in the project. Tucson Water is actually contributing funding to that portion of the work. There is some improvements to the municipal water system as part of this project. Tucson Water is contributing funding for that. And also, Pima County Wastewater is doing the same. They are contributing funding to the wastewater specific work. That doesn't really affect the bidders. That's just the buckets of money. But just to clarify, those are technically two other customers. I wanted to add a couple more things about the rail. There was some preliminary work that needed to be done by the rail that has already been done. They had to move some lighting. They also had to move some signals that were in the way of construction. That work has been completed separately from the contract by UP and their subcontractors. And also, just because the question is going to come up as far as flaggers, obviously for what we showed, there's going to be a significant amount of use of flaggers on this project. It will be the responsibility of the contractor to coordinate with the flaggers when they're going to be needed, request them. But as far as payment will come directly from the city of Tucson. It will not be passed through to the contractor. So there will not be any need to bid those items in, or really for the contractor ever to pay that and then get reimbursed. The city will pay that directly to UPRR. It will not be passed through the contractor. Similarly, UP is going to have what they call an observer present on the contract essentially at all times. It's essentially another inspector that works directly for UP. They will be present on the job at all times, and that'll also be paid directly by the city, not as passed through to the contractor.
And there's gonna be other requirements. A lot of that's outlined in the right of entry agreement, similar to what you all probably worked already in the region with UPRR. So you're very familiar with the safety requirements they have, the various E-rail safe and all their other requirements. That a lot of that's gonna be outlined in that right of entry agreement and UPR's guidelines. So
Continuing on rail, do you guys know if there are any constraints during like the Christmas season or where you can't work?
There's no, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no general thing like that. You can't work between X and Y.
Every day is their busy day. One of the busiest rail yards on the west coast. So there isn't a lull, it's always busy.
And a lot of that is helped mitigated by that containment system we discussed earlier. This was an item that actually went all the way to Omaha to talk about this. How do we build a bridge like this over an active rail yard? And how do we do it safely? So that containment system was proposed by the project team during the last couple of years. And that's what UPR decided, okay, we're good to use this, but there's gonna be subject from their approval to make sure that containment system allows us to work safely above the rail tracks. So that's one big part of this. You know, we talk about the whole structure and this being a segmental job is because we're able to work over the rail yard in a safe manner. So that's one big part of the selection of this bridge design is because of that fact and being able to utilize some containment and safety features to protect the yard while during construction.
So just I want to add a couple things that I'm sure most people in this room understand this, but I want to just go ahead and get out there. There's obviously going to need to be constant communication and coordination with UP, just with the amount of work that is going to be happening inside this rail yard, you know, and literally inside there right away. So I mentioned just a few of the submittals that are going to be needed. Obviously, any submittal, just about every submittal on the project is going to at least be passed through to UP. They're not going to have approval authority on all of them, but there will be most likely daily meetings with their field staff. You know, they're going to want to know what activity is happening today, what activity is coming up. And a lot of this will happen through the observer. Sometimes will happen through the rail yard superintendent. But just with the amount of work that is happening, you know, not only over top of, but physically in their yard, constant coordination is going to be required. We have established a relationship with them, you know, because we've been here long enough. So we feel like we're in a good position with them and a good understanding of what the work entails. I will say they were a big part of why this project went segmental. They really like the segment construction method. So, but yeah, it's obviously going to be an ongoing part of this project. Someone asked, will the sign-in sheet be provided? Yes, we will definitely post that, both the online and the in person. So we'll post that on the city's website of everybody who attended here today. Go ahead.
Taking on to UPRR, have there been any discussion? So they have 7 rails, right? Are they planning on phasing their rail usage in either way to match construction? Or are they saying we're full blown 7 rails? Watch out, here we
The
come.
latter, for sure.
It's the best to assume that all-
One thing you're gonna see in the plans and you're gonna hear repeatedly over and over from us and from them is we are not allowed to ever disrupt any of their operations.
Okay.
Whatever that means. But there will be no accommodations made by them and there'll be no disruptions allowed by us. So that's one of the reasons for the track protection system is to allow more work to occur over top of active rails. You know, the work inside the yard as far as crane placement adjacent to rails, that kind of thing, that's going to be a whole different animal. In particular, obviously the demo, there's going to be a significant amount of work going on in the rail. And then once we get to the bridge construction, foundations and substructure, obviously significant impacts. After that, you know, it's much more of a top-down model, but still constant coordination and The short answer to your question is no, no accommodations will be made.
Okay. And regarding studies for hazardous material potentially discovered within UPR right away or cultural resources, I mean, has that all been cleared on the job? Has hazardous materials and cultural resources or?
As part of the process, it's been discussed.
Austin,
And-
you wanna touch on a little more detail on that?
We're in the rail yard, you're gonna run into diesel. Take that into consideration, but the cultural resources stuff, that's all been cleared.
Okay,
Hazardous materials, we're in the rail yard, we're likely gonna.
But we're not allowed to obviously do an exploration of what's down there because it's their property and they wouldn't allow that, but yeah, Austin's correct. You know, you can use your imagination what you might find when you start digging in their property.
This is a lump sum project, I'm assuming, so therefore will there be escalation clauses allowed to be factored into the pricing award?
It will not be lump sum, it'll be traditional bid item project, so it won't be pure lump sum.
Do you have engineer's estimate cost?
We will have one. We have lots of estimates. We will provide an official engineer's estimate with the advertisement. Yes. Or no, I'm sorry, we will not. I'm sorry, you're right. We will not. We will not provide, we will provide estimate of time. We will not provide dollars. Anything else from anybody? And again, I will say, if nothing comes up today, but if something hits you tomorrow or the next few days, please feel free to reach out to any one of us three. We'd be happy to answer any questions that we can answer. And then, of course, you know, once we get to actual advertisement date, then that official process will take over as far as questions. Okay. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and close down the virtual meeting. So thank you again to those of you who attended. We really, really appreciate it. Appreciate the interest in this project and definitely be on the lookout for more information to come and the advertisements coming soon. Thank you. Anybody else welcome to stick around? You want to look at the roll plot or ask any questions of any of us in the room? So like I said, we got. If anybody has any questions that we might be able to answer, so. What's that? Yeah, we'll leave Mike, yeah.
Okay, Michael.
So yeah, for clarification, the EOR for the bridge is Mike Keller, who's not in the room. Claudia Percinelli, been involved since, I don't want to mention when.
And
So incredible amount of background knowledge of this entire project. But the actual bridge EOR is Mike Keller and Matt Kirshner from AECOM, basically all the non-structural stuff for the project. He was the first to ask about that.
have they been signing in online as well, you know, in the chat or?
Yeah, there's attendance there, so we'll be posting them both.
Yeah. You're welcome, Sir.
Want to shut down
Yeah.
and we'll leave Mike, you on.
hi, Bobby, you want to talk?
Thank you for attending, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the group as well.
You know, we gotta be prepared. Quick.
Do this.
Okay. A little less.
Oh, we took to read